Hello, everyone. I'm Theo Eshott from Henry Stewart Events, and I'm delighted to welcome you to today's webinar on a dam journey, 5 essentials you shouldn't overlook, kindly sponsored by FADEL. During the session, please send through your questions at any point using the questions box, which you can open by clicking on the question mark at the top of your GoToWebinar window. Also, a reminder that a recording of this session will be sent to you tomorrow, so you can view it again at your own pace. Now it's my great pleasure to pass you over to Sierra Marklevits from FADEL. Thank you, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Theo, and welcome everyone. My name is Sierra Marklevits, and I'm the Associate Product Manager at FADEL. And today we're going to be discussing 5 often overlooked but essential stops on your dam journey. And I have 2 special guests that will be joining us, Gregg Guest and Alana Fitzgerald, who will be joining us shortly for a panel discussion. But first, I want to kind of set the framework for our discussion. And to kick things off, let's briefly talk about the dam journey. So no matter where you're at in your dam journey, whether you're just getting started, you're deep in implementation, or you're working on optimizing your system, I'm sure that some of the things in this graphic look very familiar to you. This is kind of the typical dam roadmap. And you've likely already tackled some of the major stops like taxonomy, searchability, ingestion, etc. But here's the thing, there are other critical stops that aren't always right in front of you. They're just off the road and they can be easy to miss if you don't know what you're looking for. So have you considered some things like digital rights management, automation, analytics, content monitoring, and AI? If not, you might be overlooking some key factors that could significantly impact your success. And that's exactly what we're here to uncover today, the 5 critical stops that you don't want to miss. So, as we continue on this dam journey, I want to take a moment to talk to you about how assessment and implementation are connected. So some of the things that we'll be discussing today are more capability-based, while others are more implementation-oriented. But here's the key takeaway. It's never too early to start thinking about these things, and it's also never too late to reassess. So for example, when you're in the assessment phase, you're focused on evaluating platforms, comparing features, and trying to determine which dam system aligns the best with your needs. But if you're not thinking ahead to the implementation phase and thinking about how your workflows are going to function, how your integrations will work, or how extensible the platform is, you might run into unexpected roadblocks later. And that's why assessment and implementation are so closely tied. The decisions that you make during your assessment are going to directly impact what's possible in implementation. And while implementation isn't going to change your assessment phase retroactively, it can reveal gaps in planning that might force you to come up with workarounds or to do reevaluations. And so the 5 key considerations that we'll be talking about today are important to think about whether you're assessing or implementing, because regardless of where you're at in your process, it's important to think holistically and ensure that every decision supports both your immediate and your long-term goals. All right, so let's talk about the 5 key stops in your dam journey that are sometimes overlooked. And to set the stage, let's think of it like you're visiting New York City. If you go to New York City, you know that you're going to see the Empire State Building, the Statue of Liberty. These are iconic landmarks that everyone checks off their list. But what about the hidden gems, like the jazz clubs in the village, the tucked away speakeasies, the best late night pizza spots? If you don't look beyond the obvious, you're going to be missing out on some really valuable experiences. And the same can be said for DAM. So while everyone's focusing on taxonomy, downloads, file transformations, these are kind of your Empire State Buildings of DAM. But there are other key stops along the way that you might not be thinking about, and these can really enhance the value of your system. So whether you're still in the assessment phase, you're in the middle of implementation, or you might even be years into using your DAM, these stops are worth a visit or even a revisit, because integrating them early is always better, but it's never too late to optimize. So what are these often overlooked stops? The first is digital rights management. And with digital rights management, you want to think about this as safeguarding your assets and protecting yourself from legal headaches. If you don't have a plan for rights management, you're going to risk running into usage violations that can lead to costly compliance issues. The next is AI. And AI isn't just a buzzword. It can supercharge your dam, save you time, and make your content more discoverable. And that's just scratching the surface. Automation. Your dam shouldn't be an island. You want it to be seamlessly connected to your contract systems, your product information management systems, and your agencies. When these workflows are automated, you reduce your manual effort and you improve your efficiency. Next is content monitoring. So having a solid content monitoring strategy is going to enable you to know where and how your assets are being used and if they're in compliance. Lastly, we have analytics. You're investing in your dam, but how do you measure its success? With proper analytics, you're going to be able to make data-driven decisions in order to optimize your content usage. So as we go through these 5 stops today, think about where you're at in your dam journey. If you're early on, you can plan for these from the start. If you're further along, you can revisit them and see how you can integrate them now. Because ultimately, the more intentional you are about these elements, the stronger your dam strategy is going to be. All right, so let's get into it. So here with me today, I have Gregg and Alana with me. Gregg Guest is the Vice President of Product Management at FADEL, and he is responsible for driving FADEL's brand vision product strategies and for growing the company's presence in the brand compliance arena. He is an experienced thought leader on the complex topics of media production and content licensing. Thank you for
Thanks,
joining
Sarah.
us.
Thank you so much. Great to be here. Excited for the discussion.
I also want to extend a warm welcome to Alana. With us here today, we have Alana Fitzgerald. She is the Senior Business Manager of Global Rights at McCann. Alana is an experienced rights manager specializing in global IP management, licensing negotiations, and digital asset workflows. As the Senior Global Rights Manager, she oversees the daily operations, manages the ingest team, and evaluates process efficiencies. Thank you for joining us, Alana.
Thank you. Yeah, happy to be here. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. So to kind of kick things off, let's talk about digital rights management. So a lot of people are already aware that rights management is an important consideration, but why can't that be something that I leave for later? Because there's already so many other things that I have to consider on my dam journey. Gregg, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, it's true. Most people don't think about the importance of digital rights management early enough and thinking about it early because they're, again, focused on all this other stuff that they're doing to either assess or stand up a dam. But it's really helpful to think about it early on as part of your dam strategy because you're going to likely be going through an ingestion or a migration of your data at that time. And so that's kind of the easiest time to bring that rights data into your taxonomy as well. It might be much harder later to double back and bring that rights data into your assets and associate it to the assets. Much easier to do it when you're in the process of ingestion or migration onto a new dam or from one dam to another dam, whatever your scenario might be. And it's really, rights data isn't dam metadata, but it is an extension of kind of your overall metadata model. So you want to think of it in those terms. The same way you're defining your taxonomy for your assets and the things you want to be able to search by or filter by or provide access by, you want to also think of this other facet as rights management, which you can then associate to the metadata to your assets so that you can also search and filter, but more importantly, clear and provide use and reuse visibility to your users. So much easier to do that early on, or at least think about a strategy early on rather than not think about it at all till later. Alana, any
Right.
thoughts
And
on that?
to build, yeah, absolutely. First of all, agree with everything you're bringing up. I think that the metadata portion of it, kind of to expand on the New York analogy, I think of the rights management metadata as the pizza places, the late night pizza stops. Those are the things that the users remember. That's their experience. You know, if you have a good slice of pizza in New York, you're going to the dam for this rights information, and it's there readily available for you. That's what you remember and take away from the experience. Um, so the earlier you can think about rights management and how you're going to deliver that data to your users, the better. It leads to way less headaches down the road, and will provide an overall more valuable experience for your users.
Nothing like a good late night slice in New York City. I love that analogy.
Okay, and so why do I need that data in my dam specifically?
Well, you don't need it in your dam specifically, I would say. I think a lot of people do try to put rights information into their dam metadata fields. That can totally work, especially if your rights scenarios are fairly basic. I would say like if you're just doing kind of domestic versus international rights, then yeah, you might be able to drive that off a metadata field. But most of the brands we work with are these large global brands with multiple brands across the world in different regions, all with different types of distribution strategies, and so the rights become very complicated, sliced and diced between regions and windows for distribution platforms and different channels. And when it gets that complex, sometimes the damn metadata really isn't built to handle that type of complex data model. So depending upon your needs or how advanced your rights management is, particularly if you're doing a lot of video, which everybody's doing these days, the more video you're doing, the more complicated it's probably going to get with like multiple talent, music rights, different stock stuff, etc. Then you're going to potentially need to look at something that's built more for purpose, like a rights management solution that can extend your dam capabilities to help manage rights management. So it doesn't have to be in your dam. It can be somewhere else as long as you can provide visibility to your dam users in your dam. That's key. So wherever it is, you want to make sure that your dam users have visibility to it because they're the ones using those assets and they're the ones that need to know whether they can use it for a specific use or not.
Okay, yeah, interesting. So if I'm not storing it in my dam, where else might I be storing it?
Well, as I said, I think there's third party systems. FADEL is obviously one of them that does this to extend the rights management data, outside of the dam. But the key thing there again is that you would want to be able to make sure that that connects up to your dam in a way that your users can see that, because the users are the ones that are going to kind of need that information on a day-to-day basis for things like clearance, rights clearance, or renewal or reusability and things like that. So again, whether you do it in your metadata in your dam, if you can, that's fine. If it's more complex, you might need a rights management system that can do that. The other place you might drive that out of is something like a contract management system. Might have your data on your contracts because really rights always derive from contracts, right? Because you're contracting with talent or music publishers or whatever for the rights to something in particular. So it always kind of derives from a contract. So somewhere in that legal or talent management acquisition phase, you might have that data coming from your contract system or your talent system or a rights system. Again, it kind of depends on your process and how complicated that data is. I don't know, Lana, in your experience, you've dealt with a lot of different clients who have different needs and scenarios. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think you're hitting the nail on the head with as long as it is available to the user. I don't think, they're going to necessarily know or have it matter as much if it is in your dam or as long as it connects and they're able to access that data. Because at the end of the day, the dam user just wants to make sure that their rights are cleared, right? So that's why we say to take it back as well to rights management, why it should be thought of ahead of time is because you're putting all this time and effort and money into building your dam. And if a user at the end of the day still doesn't know if their rights are cleared, if their rights are covered, or have a just visible, very clear roadmap as to how the original rights were negotiated, that's going to lead to misuse. And those misuse claims, the cost of misuse, that is where the client is really looking to lower those costs. And that's what they're hoping your dam is going to help them with at the end of the day. So the end goal being that the client ends up saving money. So that's why having this data, whether it be in your dam or connected, is really valuable.
Yeah, I think that's key. And the risk removal aspect of it obviously is first and foremost when you're talking about rights management, removing that risk. But you mentioned cost savings as well. I think you also get a big cost savings on the kind of renewal and reusability side there, right? Like if you, for example, do have that ability to look at an asset and say, hey, can I use this for my North American social media campaign? And you get the answer, no, I can't. I don't have the rights to do that for whatever reason. Then you can pivot and say, well, what other assets do I have that do have those rights that I can swap in there and reuse that maybe I've already paid for? So maybe I don't actually need to go out and pay for any new rights or create any new content. I can just reuse what I have or renew something, easily know what I need to renew and which rights I need to renew. So I think, you hit on a specific thing there that also is a big value of thinking about and planning for digital rights management upfront.
Yeah, that's exactly right. There's a huge opportunity for cost savings, not only in the misuse field, but the reuse world as well. So having rights readily available is what leads to that. And is really, really, again, just, very valuable to clients at the end of the day.
Very good. And something that I know everyone is talking about is AI. And I wonder, do you guys have any thoughts on how AI can help with rights management and clearance? Alana?
So I'll jump in because I do have a bunch of ideas here with AI. There's going to be a lot of discussions about AI in the future. I know there's going to be, a lot of cases that AI is going to help, a lot of solutions to be had with AI in the rights management field, in the dam field that we haven't really even thought of yet. But surface level, what's, getting some attention right now is AI being able to pull the data straight from contracts. This is currently what me and my team do day to day manually, by the human eye, is pulling out the rights details from contracts coming globally from all over the world. We do our best, but there is room for human error there. So having AI be able to pull that information and input it directly into your dam or the system that you've connected to your dam that's housing the rights would be, a major enhancement, I would say. The other thing that AI is doing now is catching high risk content. So AI can kind of scour your material and make sure that, or at least point out that there are, let's say, third party rights or, celebrity talent, influencers, things like that. And Gregg, I think will want to touch on a little bit of the facial recognition aspect that's kind of being, brought to attention as well. But for third-party brands, I just want to add that for a global client, this is a huge deal because, again, room for human error. My team, we do our best, but we do not know every third-party brand used globally. So having AI be able to point that out for us is a really, really big efficiency on our end.
That's really, really interesting stuff, Alana. And we're no, as you know, at FADEL, we're doing a ton of work in this area, right? And the thing you hit on was one of the very first things that we looked at as an immediate value to our customers was, especially our customers doing rights management, was the ability to automate the AI process around contract rights data, right? Because it's manually pulling that data out of a contract to get it in a system is a big part of the work that has to be done. So if you can use AI to do that, which you can, it really helps streamline that part of the process. Just to circle back and kind of echo Sierra's theme here, I think when people talk about AI today with DAM, they're typically the first things they're thinking of is it doing auto tagging? right? Is it, can I use generative AI to create content or create marketing content, or annotate my assets using AI automatically? And those are great features, but they're almost table stakes at this point when you think
Yeah.
about dams and using generative AI. So I think some of these areas are the things to start thinking about additionally. Like first and foremost, I would say from a risk perspective, you want to make sure that you can detect content that was created with generative AI. Like this is becoming a big risk area for companies that are using Gen AI to create content, and then finding out that there's some liability related with the source of AI that created that content, or the learning materials that went into that AI. So the first thing you want to make sure is that when your users are creating generative content, where it came from, how it was created, and whether there's a risk there. So that's one feature I think of AI and DAM related AI that's very important to think about immediately. Then beyond that, kind of you get into some of the cooler stuff, like you said, like facial recognition, which can really help with talent identification. So being able to like identify talent in assets to associate them with the contracts and the rights. So you start to get this kind of AI process that's looking at contracts, identifying rights, looking at assets, identifying talent, matching the things up together. And really, 50, 60, 70% of the manual work that you would do around that is saved by that. So I think facial recognition is definitely something to consider. And I know some of the dams already are doing that, already have that facial recognition built in. If not, there are other ways to plug that in other systems and third-party tools that you can plug into that to do facial recognition, especially if you're working with celebrities. There's lots of models already out there, learning models around celebrity images to be able to do that stuff.
Yeah, and the thing that excites me most about facial recognition is it really kind of solves this problem or this gray area that we face in the rights management world of, is a talent recognizable or not in the public, right? So when we are handling reuse, something that, if you have a material with a talent blurred in the background or half their face is cut off, do you pay that talent or not for the reuse, right? So it's a very gray area. Who's kind of making that determination? Are you looking at it from, well, I cannot identify that person out in public, or is it from the point of view of that person? Hey, well, I know that's me in that image and you didn't pay me. You're still airing it. The rights have expired. Where's my money? And now you have a misuse case, right? So there's a very gray area there. But if you now have AI determining via facial recognition, this is this person, or even AI cannot determine who that is. If AI cannot determine who that is, it is likely that that person is not going to come knocking down the client's door for money, because they won't be able to identify themselves either. So it really helps kind of lessen the risk of that unrecognizable talent that we currently are just kind of rolling with the punches as we go. So facial recognition, definitely there's a good market for it right now.
That's such a cool use case. This is why I love like talking with you, Alana, because you have all these really cool real world use cases. Some of which
Mhm.
I've heard and some of which I haven't heard. That's a new one, the human test, right? Using AI to test
Yeah,
whether
yeah,
it can recognize who the human is in a picture, right? And then in order to determine
right.
whether you might have to pay them or not. So that's pretty interesting. I
Yeah.
think that's powerful. The other thing that came to mind
Hmm.
while you were talking was just beyond facial recognition is object recognition as well. And the ability for AI to, again, when we think of AI tagging, sure, AI can easily say there's a car in this image, there's a ball in this image, and then add those tags, which sometimes are valuable, sometimes really are not valuable at all because it doesn't understand context all the time, which is important. But what we're starting to work with AI is very specific object detection. So it more like facial recognition for objects, right? So that you could actually create a learning model around your product, a specific sneaker or a specific handbag or something like that, and then be able to use AI to identify that product in all your marketing materials, so that if you need to alter it or change it or withdraw it, you can easily locate it in all your marketing materials. Obviously, the same thing can be done with logos, which is really valuable with rebranding. And it's more than just a simple image search, right? Where you're kind of searching for a logo image, because that logo might be on the side of a bus in a video, right? Or, on somebody's backpack, right? And so if you're doing a rebranding, using AI to kind of find all the places where your old logo is really valuable. And as we know, most big brands typically do a rebranding every 5 to 10 years, and it costs a lot of money. So AI is an area where that's going to really help as well. So thinking about not just the basic AI stuff, but kind of these you know I would in the past say sci-fi type AI things, but they're just not fiction anymore. So
Okay, and then so I feel like kind of a natural segue, I feel like from AI is automation. And the question that comes to my mind about automation is automation of capturing rights from contracts and maybe even using facial recognition to help automate talent identification. Is this the kind of thing that people should be thinking about whenever they think about automation as part of a dam project? And like, what are your thoughts on that?
well, I'll jump in on this because I think we have talked a lot in this presentation so far about, like you said, automating contract data coming out of your contract, rights data coming out of your contracts, automating the process of talent identification and association to those rights using AI. So those are good examples of automation that you want to be thinking about in the context of those topics. When I looked at this kind of agenda and I saw that, let's talk about integration capabilities. I'm the technologist in the room, or one of the technologists in the room, as opposed to kind of the end business user. So when I think about it, I'm really thinking in terms of what are the connections and integrations that the dam that you're assessing or working on can provide you with. So kind of connections and integrations. And let me just explain what I mean by that. So like when I say connection, I kind of mean like out of the box plugins for your dam, right? And probably there's a few that you think of already when you're looking at a dam assessment, which is, for example, can I open up my asset in Photoshop, right? And plug it right into Photoshop. Or maybe a little more advanced would be, can I connect up to Getty for the stock images that I'm licensing and have those flow right into my dam. And those are, really valuable connections. But think about what other connections would bring value for you. One of that we talk about obviously at FADEL a lot is a connection to your rights management. And we talked about that earlier, that if your rights are in a third party system, make sure it can connect up to your dam, right? And that there's a connector or plugin for that. So, what other interesting connections are available on this dam that you're looking at or on the dam that you're using? And how can you maximize the use of those, pre-existing connectors that are there? We also work with a couple of really good companies that do connections, connection companies, people like CI Hub, who are good friends of ours. They kind of provide a hub to connect up multiple dams to different systems. And also our friends at OneTag, who also do like a single integration point to connect up systems. So there's a lot of opportunity there to connect your dam to other systems. And then when I try not to get too technical here, but when I think about like integration, I'm really thinking more in terms of like enterprise API connectivity through kind of your ecosystem. So for example, can your dam connect up to your PIM system, right, to share assets and product information bidirectionally between the two things? Can your dam connect to your distribution platforms, like a Salsify or Sprinkler or things like that? Salsify is more of a PIM, sorry. Sprinkler, the kind of your distribution or content platforms, so that you can have integrations there. So what type of integration capabilities are available for your dam? Does it have open API connectivity capabilities? Does it have APIs that can be used by other systems to get asset information, et cetera? And then, one last aspect of that would be, what's the extensibility of the dam around things like UIs? Can I expand the UIs in my dam? If I want to integrate to my PIM and pull in product information, can I have unique UIs that display that information in the way that I need to see it for my business? Or rights management is a great example. If I'm bringing rights data in, can I construct a clearance page where I can clear and do red, yellow, green type views of rights? And so some dams have very good extensibility in that way. Some do not. So understand the dam you're looking at or the dam you're working on. What are the capabilities there, and maximizing them. So sorry to get technical there, Alana. I don't know if you have any kind of bring it back to reality thoughts on that. But
Well, as I usually do, I will comment on the rights clearance process part. I just think that, as much as if that can be automated, the rights clearance process, it should, because, we just want to be avoiding human error. I think there's great opportunity for cost savings when we talk about automating that clearance process. And, cost savings, again, at the end of the day, that's the goal, the end goal, the minimizing those misuse costs and increasing the savings when reusing content. So having that be as automated as possible and correctly is a huge leg up in your dam if it is good at that.
for sure, for sure.
Okay, and so whenever I'm thinking about automation, I'm also kind of thinking about the workflows. So we were kind of talking about like the connections between the systems and my dam. And so is workflow something important to consider when thinking about dam automation?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because probably many people in the audience, the first thing they think when they hear automation is workflow automation, right? And
Yes.
that is extremely important. And that can come in a variety of flavors. Your dam might have a workflow engine that you can utilize, so that's great. And you want to think about that. Does it have a workflow engine that I can utilize for things like approvals? To Alana's point, clearances. Can I put workflows around clearances or renewals of rights? Things like that. Distribution workflows, et cetera. So yeah, workflow is important. Again, there's different levels of workflow capabilities within the dam. I would say, just to kind of bring it back to my original point, that a lot of our customers are using tools like Workfront or Asana, things like that, to handle their overall kind of MarTech workflow. So you definitely want to assess or think about how your dam is able to plug into that and integrate to that MarTech workflow. Because if you're running your campaign workflow process out of something like Workfront and you can't get asset and rights data into the Workfront process from your dam or your rights management system, then you're going to create manual roadblocks to be able to understand what you can and can't do with assets as you build those campaigns. And I don't know if, Alana, if you have any experience with working with any kind of workflow tools like that with your customers or not.
Yeah, a little bit. Just, your comment at the end there, not having the connection. You have assets on the dam and the user doesn't know what they can do with them because the rights have not been properly kind of workflowed into the system. We've had that happen. And it's very frustrating for everyone. The internal team's doing their best to figure out what the rights are for the user, and the user is sitting there facing deadlines and getting more and more frustrated. So, I've been in both situations, and I can say it's definitely a better experience for everyone overall when your workflow is in place properly.
Okay, and let's kind of talk a little bit about content monitoring. So one of the post-production considerations that we talk about a lot is content monitoring. Gregg, can you kind of explain to everyone what that is?
Yeah, sure. Content monitoring is really keeping track of your assets after they leave your organization and get published, right? So a lot of people will kind of be rushing to get a campaign out the door. They'll get their marketing assets done. They'll get them published out there to social media and websites, and then kind of set it and forget it and on to the next campaign because everything's moving so fast. So, but the problem with that is then you kind of lose sight of things like content expiration. So you put it out there, and if you just forget about it, eventually the rights, you may have rights in perpetuity, but more likely you have content that's going to expire, and you need to track that content where it is when it's expiring so that you can report back on that, or deal with expirations or even violations, because things don't happen perfectly. So even though you intend for a campaign to be published only on one platform, it might go out to all your social media channels, right? Because that's the way it typically would, but this one has an exception. And so you want to be able to track and monitor that. And really the process is like having a tool that can monitor those sites, websites, and social media feeds to look for your assets as they get published, and then report back on them and say, hey, you have an asset on your website that's expired, or hey, you have an asset that was posted to Facebook and you don't have Facebook rights for it. So again, you need to have that digital rights information. You need to have it integrated with your dam and your assets. But then this is an additional tool that helps you keep track of it once it's outside your organization.
Okay, and Alana, I
Yeah,
know that content monitoring can be pivotal when you're talking about reuse, and I wondered if you could speak on that.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So similar to how I mentioned, the facial recognition is, a huge gray area with unrecognizable talent. Well, same with misuse, right? Like that is something that we face constantly, and there has not really been a great overarching solution. And now we're looking into AI kind of being that gap bridger. And I think content monitoring is where it starts, number one. Without the content monitoring, you're not going to be able to know where your material is in order to pull it down, and misuse cases are going to pop up left and right, which obviously are huge, huge, huge costs to your client. So content monitoring, number one, will help with pulling, content for misuse, but it also helps with the tracking of that content and knowing where you may be able to track how things are being received in the places that it is being tracked. So for example, when we're dealing with reuse, we can clearly see we're getting a request out of, let's just say, the Philippines to reuse content. Well, based on how it did on the internet, on social media, it looks like it wasn't just Philippines. It actually, from our monitoring and our data, did really well worldwide. So now, rather than waiting on these other markets asking to reuse that content and kind of piecemealing those costs, which end up being a greater cost overall, than maybe just negotiating a worldwide internet use from the jump when we receive that Philippines request. So having the data that gets pulled from the content monitoring is a huge win for saving on reuse costs as well, not just misuse. But just to take it back to mention, I mentioned AI being, kind of an assist with this. Something that Greg and I were mentioning is how can content not only get flagged by AI as, oh, it is still online and it is about to expire or it has expired, but also maybe how automation can play a part in eventually pulling down that material automatically, which would be a huge, huge, huge game changer, because then you really would not have to be worrying about misuse costs. Ideally, that automated process would be taking down the content and avoiding any risk for you going forward or for the client going forward. So I can let Greg kind of touch on that a little bit more.
Yeah, I think, hopefully the audience is starting to see as we weave through these things that they're actually all connected, right? And that this is why you need to think about kind of all these things holistically, as Sierra mentioned up front, in order to really have the most valuable strategy, because they all interact with each other. So like you said, content monitoring at FADEL, we're using a lot of AI to do that content monitoring, to do the tracking of sites, to do the matching and identification of images and videos and music and all of that. And where we're going with it, like you said, is automating takedowns, et cetera, and things like that using AI. So there's automation, there's AI, there's digital rights management, there's content tracking. All of the things we've talked about, come together to create this really powerful value that goes way beyond your dam itself. And that's kind of the whole point of the discussion today, I think. So hopefully that's resonating with the folks that are here today.
Okay, and then kind of a follow-up question to that, is content monitoring something that most dams can do? Like, is that a common feature in a dam?
I guess the answer is kind of yes and no to that.
Okay.
There are some things you can do from within a lot of the dams, such as watermarking or digital pixel insertion, and then track images that way through identification of a watermark or a pixel or things like that. And that'll get you some value. What I'm talking about is really a little bit more advanced, and typically it doesn't happen within the dam. It's a process that plugs into your dam, so it takes your asset information and then has the capabilities to go out and index and crawl and scrape different things on the web. And it's very complicated. Like, so the dams, probably don't want to get into this area. Trust me, dams, if you're listening, it's super complicated because, every site is different. Every social media platform has different parameters and rules about what you can and can't do as far as scanning the stuff. So it's a very complex ecosystem, and you really need a technology that's like really focused on doing that. And then you have the matching capabilities as well. So once you find things out there, you really need kind of high-powered AI to be able to identify and match videos, music, images, etc. So the more we typically see these things happening more with third-party providers that are focused on one or the other. For example, we work with a music provider that their technology, what it does is it goes out and finds music and identifies published music that's owned by record companies so that you can protect brands from having unlicensed music on their assets out there. That's their niche, you know what I mean? And then we at FADEL, we use some proprietary AI technology that we've developed for video and image matching. We're talking to other partners who are very strong in the facial recognition and object recognition areas. So there's players out there that you have to kind of look for what's the best solution. But it does start with your DAM and what your DAM can do. And again, your DAM might do some of this. Again, what's important is that your DAM has the ability to integrate with other stuff to bring this value in if your DAM doesn't have it. I hope that answered the question.
Yes. And I want to be sure that we touch on analytics. And I know that Alana, you're really passionate about analytics and reporting. So I want to direct this next question to you. So in kind of talking about analytics, why analytics? Like, isn't this something that all dams come with as reports? Like, what am I missing there?
Yeah, so I think that in terms of other dams, having the capability to report, I think generally speaking, there's always that capability, that option. But I think what excites me about reporting is it really is, like Greg said, this is all connected, but this is kind of the end of the circle. So now you've done all of this, but you want to be able to see in your reports, was it worth it, essentially? And I'll tell you, it is, because when you're looking at reports and the capabilities of reporting, the more the merrier, because the more data you're able to pull and report on and analyze, the more efficiencies that can be found to, again, further enhance your dam. So for example, my team recently used FADEL to pull a report to show how many internal use clearance requests we were receiving in the last few months. We had felt like there were a bunch, but we needed the data to kind of back it up to see if there was a more efficient way to kind of handle these internal use requests, because they were kind of a bit of a time suck for our team, as well as leading to delays for users that should have been more readily available for them, with still protecting the client and making sure rights were covered. So we were able to pull that report and easily tell that we were getting inundated with a variety of internal use requests where it was going to be worth the time and effort to figure out maybe a better, more efficient way to handle these internal use requests. So now that's like an ongoing thing we're working on with FADEL as an enhancement. So the reason I love reporting is because it's always going to lead to enhancements and efficiencies, and kind of having proof and backing up the things that you're already thinking when you're working in it day to day. And the coolest part too is now, again, we're living in a world with AI, right? So AI can analyze the data for you as well.
And that couldn't have been the more perfect lead in to my little surprise today, which is that I have a little demonstration that I'm going to do. And everything you just said is going to play into it. So thank you for teeing it up like that. Just to add to what you were saying, I think, yeah, reporting is important, right? And most dams are going to have reports or a list of reports or even some capability to create reports. And I think that's where it starts to get interesting, is that, like you said, users, they're always going to want new reports. They're always going to say like, well, this is great, but can I do this, or can I see this, or and that's some of the areas where, like you said, we're working together to do enhancements on the reporting that's available. So I think, two things to think about when you think about analytics is three things actually. First is you have to have the data. So again, it's all connected in the sense that you have to have rights data and asset data and content usage data, et cetera, and social media performance data. And the more data that you can feed into a platform that you can then report on top of or do analytics on top of, the more value you're going to get. And then it's really kind of two levels, like reporting, which I think of more as kind of end users on a day-to-day basis need reporting to do their job and get reports and find information. And then there's kind of the the C-level view, which is you want to make sure not just that you have the reports to see kind of who downloaded what this week, right? But that you can combine that with a bunch of data that says what was it used for, where was it used, what was the performance of it, so that you can really provide like C-level KPIs, dashboarding, et cetera, and those types of really business analytics that will help you not just run your operation, but actually be successful in expanding your operation, because you can make business decisions, predict trends, gauge performance, et cetera, on that level. So if you'll humor me, I do have a small demo I can share with you on this, just to give you an idea of what we're talking about, and you'll see kind of how all these pieces, come together. Okay, so if you can see my screen, I am using a tool called QuickSight. This is actually something that we are in the process of integrating into our applications at FADEL. So it's really exciting, cutting edge. I don't think Alana has seen this yet. I don't even know if Sierra's seen much of this yet. It's so it's so fresh. But just to give you an idea, in QuickSight, I can basically set up data sets, and so I can have a data set that is based on my asset and rights information. So for example, I can create data sets and I can tie different data sources together. And I'll try not to get too technical here, but you can see I have like a data source for my asset information. I have a data source for my rights information. And then I have some additional data sources which add context to the rights, like uses and territories. And then I can do joins and join all that data together. And this can be, from within one system or from multiple systems that I can join together there. And once I've created that that data set, I can then go in and easily access that data set to do things like reporting, like we were talking about, to generate a report here. I just kind of pre-canned one here that shows kind of assets and their territories and rights that they have here based on that data set. And then I can do simple things like, again, if I've pulled in all my data here and created it in the right way, the users can actually easily use it here and say, well, let me add creation date in here, right? And just drag and drop that in here. So if as a user, if I want to build reports or create new reports, I can totally do that here. And I can even add things like conditional formatting. So I can say, well, if my end date is before a certain date, make it red if it's before today's date, and color that red. And then I can apply that, and I can instantly see that my end dates there, any end dates that are before or past today in expiration are already red there. So cool, like end user reporting capabilities there. So when we talk about reporting, that's really powerful stuff, to be able to have a tool that can do all that plugs into your DAM data and your other data. Then what you can do with that data is you can actually use that, for example, on dashboards. So then I can take that data and I can build dashboards with it, and I can create dashboards that have graphs and different information that I'm putting out, and I can share these with executives, et cetera, so that I can see my data in a dashboard format. Really easy to build these as well. And then the cool part where AI really starts to come into this is that I can also use AI to look at the data. So I'm going into my asset topic here, and I can actually do natural language queries of this data, so that AI can give me an answer. Like, for example, I can say, how many, it's pre-canned from my test, how many video assets and image assets do I have, right? And now it'll go and look at all that data, and it'll present back to me the answer, and it'll assess my question and try to figure out exactly what I'm looking for. And it'll give me the answer, not only what I'm looking for, but it'll actually go beyond and give me some additional information as well there on how many video assets and image assets that I have. So here I've got 448 video assets, 298 image assets. And then it's gone beyond and sort of said, well, here's the sizes of some of those largest ones, and how many, there are 2 unique types of videos, and it's kind of doing an AI assessment of it. So it's pretty powerful. If I do one more, I could say, like, show me a pie chart of active assets by territory. And it'll actually look at that data, understand what active means, that I have assets that are active or inactive. It'll look at the active assets, and then it'll look at the territories, to distribution territories for those assets, and it'll bring back the data. So putting this data in the hands of end users in a way that they can really easily interact with it. So they can either, if they're a little more technical, they can drag and drop and create reports, or they can, more and more will be able to just ask a question and get this type of answer. And you see, again, it came back with, my assets by territory here, Europe, North America, et cetera, and gives me a bunch of other information about that. And then finally, a cool thing there is that I can then create data stories with that, which can include all of this in kind of a story that I can share with management or users and add, AI content to it. And so very easily be able to pull together analytics and create reports and provide that information to your C-level folks and even, be ready to go. I'm ready for the boardroom here with this presentation. So just a little preview of what's coming and how much easier it's getting to do all that stuff. But again, only if you have the data and the data is connected in a way that you can actually pull it all into an analysis tool like that and see rights information and content usage information and et cetera, et cetera. So I hope that all made sense and was useful.
Very cool.
Back to you, Sierra.
Thank you so much, Gregg and Alana, for joining us today and for having this discussion with me. We've gotten a couple of questions from the audience, but before I go through their questions, I want to extend this special offer to you all from FADEL. So as you're embarking on your journey, no matter where you're currently at, if you want to understand kind of the recommended path from a compliance perspective, FADEL can do a quick assessment for you to kind of help you understand the overlay of compliance and how it can fit together with your overall dam strategy. And you can contact us for this assessment through email at solutions@fadel.com. Okay, let's kind of open it up for some questions. Let's see what we've got here. So, okay, so here's a question kind of talking about AI and asking if AI has the capability to help with takedowns.
Yeah, I think we touched on this earlier. I think we're definitely looking at ways to help with that. Takedowns. So takedowns, just so people know what we're talking about, is you publish content out there, it expires, and now you need to take it down, right? And that could be through. It can be complicated because it's different teams doing different things, right? So like your website team is different than your social media team potentially in these large companies. So you may not know where to go or who to look to, and then it's a manual process in a lot of cases. Communicating with that team to bring it down, and then they're manually having to go out and kind of take the data they were given and find the asset and bring it down. So a lot of manual processes right now. So we're active at FADEL looking for ways to help automate that process. Kind of beginning with making the communication more automated so that people, like who's responsible for that content, what has to be done to that content, and you're sending that communication directly to them, or you're sending it, invoking a workflow for it and wrapping a workflow around it. I think that as the AI, capabilities develop, inevitably AI is going to be able to do a lot of that. But it still is going to come down to having AI be able to, AI will be able to definitely tell you what to take down and where it is and how to take, but the actual takedown is really a function of the system you use to put it up, right? And so, being able to connect up to that system and pull it down is a technology question of, how soon will AI be able to have access to those technology systems, or, what liabilities, there's value there obviously, but what are the risks, right? Some of the people out there are probably saying, I don't like the idea of giving AI access to all my technology systems to run them and do things, right? So, I have to see how that evolves, so to speak. But I think it will help inevitably. I think AI is going to help with everything, really, at the end of the day. I don't know, Lana, what your thoughts are. You probably have much more experience with taking things down than I do.
Yeah, I think currently having AI at least have the capability to, like you said, kind of pinpoint the assets that need taking down first and foremost will be a huge help regardless. Because the manual process right now, something that we encounter a lot is different end dates to the rights. So if you have, let's say, a TVC, you have a moving asset and it's got talent, it's got music, it's got uh, stock imagery or footage, some of those things might have different end dates just based on cost savings, right? So maybe, yeah, you only intend to air the asset for a year. So it was cheaper, it was, affordable to negotiate the music rights for a year, but the talent, it was almost the same cost to secure them for 2 years. So they went ahead and secured them for 2 years. However, because of the music rights, that TVC, that moving asset, needs to come down at the end of the year because the music will be misused otherwise if it stays online past then. So there is the human error there, right, of looking at it going, oh, well, the talent are covered for 2 years, we're good, without realizing that the music is expiring. So hopefully AI will be able to, very easily determine what we call the most restrictive and say, no, 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 this is the last date that the TVC can air as a whole. And if anyone wants to keep airing it, then we discuss reuse and how much that would cost someone.
Yeah, makes total sense.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Good question.
And then I
Yeah.
think we have time for about one more question. So, and I'm sure this is a question that a lot of people have, wondering how much do these different rights management tools and content monitoring and all that, how much does this add to the cost or to the time frame?
Yeah, it always comes down to that, right? How much is this going to
Yeah.
cost me? And yeah, you're probably right. People are out there like, well, this all sounds great, but you just tripled my budget, right? So, um, the answer is it depends, obviously, on what tools you use, who you work with, how much your dam can do, what dam platform you're on. So there's a lot of variables. So it's kind of hard to answer that question in a specific way. But I think the takeaway I would want you to have from today's presentation is to have a plan, right? To think about the long-term plan up front. You don't have to do all this on day one. You won't be able to do all of it on day one, right? Who could? It's a lot of stuff. And as everybody knows, it's hard to stand up a dam, right, or do a dam transition, or even keep your dam, running. It doesn't have to be all done on day one. Think about it in terms of, what am I doing year one? What am I doing year two? What am I doing year three? Right. And it's a long-term plan. But what we want you to understand is think about all this stuff up front that you're going to want to, your journey might be long, your trip might be short, but your journey might be long. And we want you to kind of think about, you're going to hit these stops as you go. So prepare yourself for being able to do that later. And then, yeah, actual cost of these things, obviously it varies. But there's usually low end and high end, right? Like with dams, you can kind of go low end or high end, depending upon what your needs or your budget is. So it doesn't have to cost you the moon to do all this stuff. It's very achievable, right? And a lot of these are low cost relative to the dam cost itself. They're additional bolt-ons that can add a lot more value than they're going to cost. So I'm sure Alana, you have thoughts about really, the cost of, maybe you could speak to the cost of not having this stuff, right?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think there's a saying, if you want to make money, you got to spend money, something like that. But yeah, I think by not investing in these, you end up having to spend more in the long run to eventually catch up and get these capabilities. So by spending that money from the beginning, that's going to lead to so much cost savings for your client. Maybe you're able to kind of make up for it by being able to charge them more because their experience with your dam is better than other ones they've tried in the past that didn't have these capabilities. So at the end of the day, sure, maybe you do end up having to spend a little bit more upfront, but I can almost guarantee and almost promise that it will be more costly for you down the road to add these things later on, if they're not thought about. So that's really why we're kind of bringing all these points up, is to try and save you costs in the long run. And I think that overall, it's just going to add value to your dam if you are considering these things, even a little bit. I'm definitely biased towards the rights management. I do think you should put a lot of effort into that and the clearance processes. But any of these items, if you even have considered it a little bit on your journey, it's going to add value to your dam, and just make it overall a better experience for everyone.
Yeah. And we can definitely help at FADEL. If you reach out to us, we can definitely help with ROI tools on a lot of this stuff that can show that ROI. So perfect.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me today. And to kind of take it back to our New York City analogy, thank you for talking with us about these hidden gems, the late night pizza spots. So I appreciate you guys for joining me today and for talking about this stuff.
This was fun. Let's go get a slice together.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
And
everybody.
just the spot. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sierra, Greg, and Alana. That was a great discussion. Just a reminder that you will all receive the recording of this session tomorrow, so you can view it again. And if you'd like to find out more about our upcoming events, courses, and webinars, please take a look at the Henry Stewart website. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Theo.